let's let me play this. Well, actually, I wanted your thoughts on this. Speaking of sectarianism, I'm wondering if one of the big reasons why the United States, I mean, I think that people have to realize that the reason why we're talking about the MOU is because the U.S. is obviously admitting, without actually admitting, that they can't or are afraid or both of going back to a higher intensity war, shooting war with Iran right now. I mean, that should be obvious. And one of the developments that doesn't get talked about a lot is how Iran has been taking care of a lot of these sectarian elements throughout the war, especially around the Iraqi border, the so-called Kurdish elements. And then we heard Israel, according to Dropsite News, they said now Israel is kind of spinning this narrative that they had trained these so-called Kurdish militants to be armed and ready to invade Iran and cause chaos and regime change, etc. But it was Trump that stopped them. And the story went some months ago that actually, I think the Trump administration leaked out through some U.S. officials that, no, these forces didn't want to fight. There was supposedly a letter going around from these Kurdish factions saying, no, we aren't wanting to do this. What do you make of this? Because I think one of the elephants in the room is that, well, if the U.S. were to, with Israel, try to continue on this kind of destroy Iran, overthrow the government, chaos and or regime change, you have to have something to wield like they had, for example, with the Al-Qaeda forces in Libya. They don't have that. So what's your reaction to this and how Iran has handled that situation, especially regarding potential forces that could serve that role as in other wars?
Well, the Iranians are constantly bombing the positions of these terror groups in northern Iraq. But the fact is that these people are undermining their own credibility by being seen as cooperating with the Israelis and the Americans and attacking Iran. In other words, they are seen as foot soldiers of empire. Everyone is saying that Iran is fighting back, Iran is fighting heroically, and the axis of resistance is fighting heroically. Look at Jolani, look at these Kurdish separatists. They're with the other side, and that destroys their credibility. And the same is true on the border with Pakistan. They've been using these Takfiri, these Wahhabi, Salafi terror groups there to attack Iranians. Just yesterday, they murdered an Iranian soldier on the border, but they're only exposing themselves for what they are, and that is engaging in conflict with Iran at a time when Iran is confronting the Israeli regime. Again, everyone is being exposed for what they really are, and it's clear where they're getting the money. It's clear where they're getting the orders. But these Kurdish terror groups and the other groups in northern Iraq, they don't have that capacity. Just like those terrorists who on January the 8th and 9th tried to carry out a coup in Iran and slaughtered hundreds of police officers and volunteers and officers of the law in 2 days. And the West, of course, lied about it, pretended tens of thousands of people were killed. All that was done to justify the war. All of that was, remember, when the war started, they were constantly saying two things. Iran is going to use a nuclear weapon. Joe Kent said Iran wasn't even developing one. And that Iran had killed tens of thousands. So all those fake leftists and all those fake imperialist group liberals in the West who repeat whatever Western intelligence agencies feed them through their Western media, they were helping justify making the case for war against Iran. The 3,117 people who died in that failed coup, in that failed military uprising, most of them were innocent bystanders, but those people, those attacks were carried out to prepare the ground for war. That was the objective all along, because they were not going to succeed in overthrowing the Iranian government. They were trying to create as much chaos and mayhem and death and destruction as possible to prepare the ground for what was already being planned. And the useful idiots, to be what if I want to be kind, the useful idiots, they played their role. Instead of saying the West carried this operation out, they are the ones who are guilty of killing 3,117 people, including hundreds of police officers, as I said, and many ordinary people. We've discussed this before. Instead, they repeat the nonsense of, 80,000 people, 800,000 people, 6 million people, or 8 million people. They repeat that nonsense and they make the case for war.
Yeah, great points. Well, let's get to Trump. So Trump has addressed this question over whether he can control Israel around the Lebanon situation. This is what he had to say to the Axios show. So this literal intel mouthpiece, U.S. intel, Israeli intel mouthpiece, I guess now has a show. Here is what he told the Axios show.
If it weren't for Donald Trump, Israel would have been eviscerated.
Your relationship with Netanyahu's...
It's good, but we have to keep him a little bit sane.
Are you going to be able to control Israel from attacking Lebanon?
Yeah, I will be. I mean, I wonder. They have a lot of respect for me. And they do as I say.
Do they? That's, it's like, do they? But you're right.
He helps with the genocide. Of course they do.
Really?
They love him. As long as he's helping slaughter babies, as long as he's helping slaughter children, as long as he's helping destroy towns and cities in Lebanon and in Gaza, of course. But then, if the U.S. economy is running on empty, if the gas tank of the U.S. economy is running on empty, and he says, no, this has to stop, then of course he's no longer a credible guy to the Zionists. Not genocidal enough, not committed enough to genocide.
Well, it's actually quite astounding. First, I don't know if you saw the data, but just for signing off on the, actually, was this? I think it was the signing of the Iran-U.S. MOU, the Islamabad MOU. When that happened, immediately there were polls conducted in Israel where his approval rating in Israel fell to something like negative 0.23% or something like that. Something very drastic and large. And I'm curious if you have any comments on what does that tell you? Because as you said before, Israel, the entirety of the, I guess if we can call it a society, the colony is very much in favor, of course, of what is the Israeli regime does against Lebanese people, Palestinians, genocide. But it takes not very much for the same cohort of people, these settlers, to turn on even those like Trump, who, I mean, if we look at his resume, very, very friendly to Israel.
Well, we've all seen the polls. We've seen that this is a genocidal society, and it was created through genocide and rape and murder and plunder. I mean, there's that documentary that I'm sure you and many others saw from a few years back, and they were speaking to those terrorists who murdered and raped the Palestinians and forced them to leave, and they'd laugh about how they raped the girls and then murdered the girls and gang raped the girls and all that. I'm sure you saw that documentary. It was bits and pieces of it. Parts of it were people would show, because after October the 7th, there was a huge attempt by the West to pretend as if the world history began on October the 7th, alongside the lies about rapes and the beheadings of 40 babies and all those lies. There was also an attempt to prevent the Israeli the context of what had happened to be widely understood, and that documentary became very popular watch online because a lot of pro-Palestinian activists were published. I tweeted bits and pieces of it, different videos of it, and it was like a stunning, like the Israeli terrorists who were like the people who had carried out the Nakba and expelled the Palestinians. They would laugh about how they raped the girls, and then when the guy came out of the room with the girl, she was like a half dead rag, you know, and it was like stunning how he was laughing and how he took pleasure and the memory was so pleasant. This is Israel. That's what the Israeli regime is all about. If I find the clip, I think I have it on my cell phone. I delete a lot of stuff to prevent my cell phone from getting full, but I think I have that particular clip. In any case, this is a genocidal people, and anything that helps genocide, anything that helps ethnic cleansing and the strengthening of their ethno-supremacism, that's still supported. If suddenly they think someone's not genocidal enough, then of course they turn to hate him, just like the neocons in Washington, who till yesterday were all rooting for for the Zionists, were rooting for Trump, and now they're all outraged at the deal. They too would prefer the U.S. economy to crash. They don't care. These Zionists in the United States, they don't care about the United States.
Right. And just so I'm not accused of cooking the books, what I should have said is that in just 3 weeks, the latest poll taken after the MOU was signed, the reversal, it's a negative 23% decline in approval, going from 58% positive for Trump just 3 weeks ago to now 61% in the negative. So a massive drop. So I might have overstated a little bit, but no less.
Do you have that? Do you know what video I'm talking about of those Zionists?
I don't have it, but I could search for it.
Sorry?
I don't have it. No, I don't have the video. I wish.
If I send it to you, could you can you put it under like a link to it, or well, it's not a link. It's anyway, forget it.
I probably could.
If I find it, I'll tweet it tonight.